British Horse Racing Authority. Hugh Taylor is live now on the phone. And Hugh, first of all, a very good afternoon. You've got 4 horses for us, 2 jumpers and 2 flat ones.
Yeah, we've got 2 that ran at the same meeting at Leicester, and a couple that run on the flat, one at Southwell and one at Wolverhampton this week.
Well, listen, let's start with the top, the top of the horse at the top. Presenting Ace. Now, this ran, what was it, 4th at Leicester just over a week ago?
That's right, and the 2 that I've picked from Leicester are both hurdlers who largely stayed to the far side in the straight. It's not that often you get a big track bias in national hunt racing, but I do think occasionally at Leicester on soft ground it can be a disadvantage on the hurdles track to stay over the far side. And presenting Ace has faded out of the picture now. You kind of need to watch this from the top of the home straight, really, but he stayed to the inside throughout the whole race, including in the straight. And the evidence of the racing on that day strongly suggests that was a fairly big disadvantage. There was a 1-3 shot that stayed at the far rail, got turned over in the selling hurdle. And I think this horse is going to be, that was his hurdles debut. I think he's going to prove a fair bit better than this in time. He was disadvantaged by where he ran.
Are we looking at a particular distance, or, I mean, obviously that was pretty testing ground?
I think he'll stay further in time. He was a fair bumper horse. He ran quite well on his second start in a bumper at Newbury. Yeah. I suspect he'll stay a fair bit further than 2 miles in time, and he may be one for handicaps further down the line. But I certainly think he's better than that. The distance he was beaten to yesterday, anyway.
Well, that's interesting, Hugh. I always like the way you look at things from a different angle, because that's going to be a big price whichever race he runs in. So presenting Ace, that could be one for the tracker on attheraces.com. Now, Fiendish Flame. Now, what about this one? Why don't we put Fiendish Flame up?
Well, Fiendish Flame's a horse. The first thing about him is he definitely needs to go right-handed. He's a way better horse going right-handed than left-handed, in my opinion. And he absolutely trotted up over this course and distance on his previous start. And again, you can see he stayed on the far rail throughout. And he's still right there. In fact, he jumps the second last just about in front still. But he's on. I'm sure that wasn't the best part of the track on that particular day. Funnily enough, it had been fine the previous week when he'd stayed at the far rail, but he was probably against better horses this day, and he does fade in the closing stage. And I think he might be a big price next time out, because he's going to be £8 higher next time as a result of his previous win. But he won so easily then. And bear in mind, this was a fairly quick turnaround as well. But I think he's not necessarily done with, even though he's going to be up a lot higher in the weights, having been beaten here, because I just think he was racing on the wrong part of the track. But I would say I definitely think this horse needs to go right-handed. If you ever watch him running left-handed, he jumps very much to the right and gives too much ground away.
Well, that's worth knowing. But is he a horse who needs to lead? I mean, if they take him on, will that cause problems for him?
Well, that was the other thing about that race. There were 2 J.P. McManus-owned horses in the race. One was the eventual winner, and the other took Fiendish Flame on right from the start, and he was made to go too fast, really, in the early stages. And he's probably going to be better with if he doesn't get an easy lead. But he obviously didn't get that day because the J.P. McManus second string was right up there with him from the start.
Interesting. I remember that race. Now, come on, let's go on to Mattershire. Now, this was at Southwell, just a week ago, and this horse ran well that day.
Yeah, Mattershire won, and this was an improved performance on his first start on fibre sand, and horses like that are always worth looking out for again on fibre sand. It takes him a while to get to grips with the surface, but he looks to have plenty of size about him, and he's got a big round action, and he looks the kind of horse who, when the ground gets that bit deeper, he's been riding quite fast at Southwell lately, but when the ground gets deeper this winter, I think he'll probably cope with it quite well. And he started his fibre sand career on a really low mark. I think he was running up a minimum mark here, 45. And the runner-up and the third, the form looks solid enough for the grade. The runner-up was heavily backed, and the third was the favourite, also heavily backed. And I liked his attitude in the closing stages. He really stretches out, seemed to really like the surface. As I say, I think he'll like it again when it gets deeper at Southwell, when they start harrowing it more. And he's only gone up to a mark of 50. I'm sure he can be at the very least competitive off that and probably win again. So yeah, he's a horse who I think will win 1 or 2 more on fibre sand this winter.
What sort of distance, Hugh? Because looking at him there, it looks as if he'd go around again.
Well, that was a mile, and the problem you've got at Southwell is if you want to go further than a mile, the next distance up is 1 mile 3. There isn't a 1 mile 1 or 1 mile 2 distance there, but I suspect he would probably get 1 mile 3. I quite often find that horses stay a bit beyond on Fibre Sand what you might expect, despite the fact that it's quite a testing surface. But there's no reason why they shouldn't keep him to a mile, given that he's already won over that distance, and then perhaps step him up further a bit later on.
What happens if he runs on the faster surfaces, at Wolverhampton or Lingfield? Would he still be a horse to be on?
I wouldn't be so interested in that. I'm not saying he can't win, but
no.
he'd run at Wolverhampton the time before and had run okay up to a point and then faded. But he just looked to take very well to Fibre Sand. I mean, the funny thing is, he's actually a USA bred. He's got the USA suffix after his name, but he's by the leading Australian stallion Reduced Choice, and I'm pretty sure he was his first runner on Fibre Sand, and of course it was a winner. So it'll be interesting to see if we see. There aren't that many Reduced Choices running over here, but that one certainly took very well to the surface.
So the fourth horse is Ducal, and he ran fourth at Wolverhampton the other day.
Yeah, this was on his first start for Mike Murphy, who's a trainer who's done very well over the last 2 or 3 years with horses he's acquired from other trainers. And he'd been in good form for Sir Mark Prescott, but he had a difficult draw to deal with. He was drawn in stall 12, so drawn very wide, and he was a bit keen during the early stages, and he's been wide throughout the race, 3 or 4 wide. And the eventual, of the first 5 home, the eventual first four of the first 5 have raced almost next to the rail throughout until they came a bit wider in the straight. And Ducal makes his challenge on the wide outside. Looks like he's going to win for a stage. He comes through, and perhaps his early exertions have just taken the toll. Plus, he's gone the long way round throughout. But I thought this suggested that he's returned, or he's continued his good form that he was in for Sir Mark Prescott. It's worth remembering that Mike Murphy took Lutein Bell from Sir Mark Prescott, and he did very, very well with him, and I think he's going to do very well with this horse as well. He's a very good trainer with limited ammunition in terms of price tags, but he does well with what he gets.
Well, people are watching now, Hugh, so just sum up each of the 4 horses that you've put up.
Well, Presenting Ace and Fiendish Flame are similar in that they both raced up the far rail. It's worth having a look back at the replays from Leicester, because there are 2 or 3 other horses you could put in that category, but those were the 2 I picked out. They raced up the far rail throughout at Leicester, and I think were unfavoured by that. Matagier took really well to Fibre Sand, started off on a really low mark, and he's rated 50, but I'm sure he's going to be rated higher than that if they keep running him on Fibre Sand. And Ducal, I thought was a very promising start for his new trainer, having been in good form for his previous trainer, given he was drawn wide, raced wide throughout, and he was a bit keen early on.
Well, thank you for those. I've got all those 4 down. Now, what about today? I know you've got a couple. Let's start with the one at Lingfield in the last race. You fancy Kames Park?
Yeah, Kames Park, he's a bit of a tricky character because he needs everything to drop right, so he wouldn't be one I'd ever be interested in at short odds. But I felt on his last 2 starts, and particularly last time, he's shaped as if he's in good form, and he's dropped to a mark that he's well capable of winning off. And you can see this was a race that wasn't really run at a very strong gallop, as is often the case at Lingfield, and of course the same might happen today. But he's travelling really well, but he's 2 or 3 lengths behind the last horse approaching the home turn, and the front 3 or 4 just they're not going to fade. They keep going all the way to the line. So he's basically having to try and come through horses that aren't stopping, that are keeping going to the line. And I thought it was quite significant that in the final furlong, he was really the only one who made really significant headway from the rear. He stays on very well. He is tricky. He does need everything to drop right, and it'll be the same today. But he stays on. He's never near at the finish. It might be the same again today, but he's capable of winning if everything drops right, and he's a double-figure price.
Well, I was going to say, he's already into 8-2. Wow, he was double figure when you put him up this morning. By the way, Whoop Whoop is favourite here, and he's, of course, is owned by Lee Westwood, the great golfer. And I know what he'll be saying if that horse wins. He'll be saying, Whoop Whoop. Also, watch out for Rose Aurora. I thought that one would have a chance, but yours is top price now, 8-1. Of course, what time do you put them up? Is it around about 10 o'clock every day?
Usually it varies depending on when the bookmakers have got prices out, when we get it ready for that sort of thing. Roughly around that kind of time,
And you've got one at Kempton tonight. Which one's this?
Rosewood Lad I've put up each way. It's a competitive race, and he's by no means a sure thing or anything like that. But he ran last time in a race that was running a really fast time, a course record time, and I didn't think the course was riding especially lightning quick, but they broke the course record by more than a second. I think it's a race that the form will work out well from.
Yeah.
He might just be a shade better at Wolverhampton, this horse, but he's reasonably well handicapped. And in an open race, I thought each way at 14-1. I'm hoping to make plenty of use of him because he doesn't do anything quickly. He needs a bit of stoking up, but he's got a reasonable each way chance if he gets the run of the race. It's
an interesting race, that. And as you said, it's a good... La Estrella is a prolific winner as well. And,
La Estrella's an out-and-out Southwell horse. He's unbeaten at Southwell.
Yeah.
It's not to say he can't go well at other courses, but that's where he excels.
Well, listen, that is very interesting. So, Keynes Park at Lingfield, Rosewood Lad at Kempton tonight. Hugh, you're a star. What are you doing over the weekend? Where are you? Anything sorted yet for the weekend, or are you busy with your head down?
I shall be sitting in front of my computer, as I always am, looking for bets.
You are a real star. And just to confirm, every day from round about 10 o'clock, it can vary half an hour either way, but 10 o'clock onwards, you can get his best information on attheraces.com. Hugh Taylor, thank you.
Thank you very much.